As the church grew, we began to realize some facility limitations and wanted to address several things, one of which was accessibility. We had a run on special needs adoptions, which was very exciting for us as a congregation, but we had people in wheelchairs and apparatuses, and we also needed to address how people accessed our children's ministry area in our day and age. We didn't have a clear shot into our kids' area, and that was a deterrent for young families. And for a variety of reasons, we knew we needed to give some thought to this. And we had developed some plans, but we just didn't know how to get from point A to point B. And the nature of the project was such that we could not just accomplish it in smaller chunks. It was either all or nothing. And if I'm honest, I wrestled a lot with a fear of failure. I knew that the project would be a real stretch for us. What if we got it partway done and couldn't finish? Or what if we were only able to raise half the funds? And I didn't want to be the guy with the half-built tower, right, that Jesus talked about. So that's where Church Growth Services came in to play for us. We contracted with them to conduct a pre-campaign analysis, and they interviewed a small group of our people, but then did a broader congregational survey, gathering demographic data and financial data. To be honest, gathering a lot of information that would have been really hard for us to obtain. And that was really a productive process for us. They identified a couple things in that. One was that receptivity was really strong. And that was an affirmation to us. People felt like it was the right project. They felt like it was the right time. They also determined that our capacity was lower than we thought, our financial capacity. And so we came away from that really confident to move forward, but realizing we had to make some real adjustments in terms of the scope of the project and how we structured things financially. And we just felt like Church Growth Services gave an opportunity for people to give honest feedback. We were at a place as a church where there was really high trust in leadership, but we didn't want people to just go along with it. We wanted and we needed buy-in. And so we felt like when they were able to sit down with representatives from Church Growth Services that they were going to be able to be brutally honest and maybe say things and push back in ways that they wouldn't if they were talking to their pastor. And so that certainly proved to be the case. There were some pressure points that they were able to identify that really helped us navigate things going forward. And then there was the question of whether we contract with Church Growth Services for the campaign itself. No one was excited about spending extra money when we were already, having to stretch to meet a campaign goal. But we, particularly as leadership, were convinced early on that the benefit was greater than the cost. I have my taxes prepared by someone else, and that's mostly because clergy tax is complicated and the laws are always changing. So my tax preparer will almost every year point out some new law that has some new implication for me, and he'll make suggestions about how I could better allocate my expense account and save on taxes in different ways. And every year I drive home so thankful that I spent the money to have my taxes prepared because he saved me so much more than I paid. And we just came to think that that's really a pretty good way to understand our relationship with Church Growth Services. Campaign projects like this are not normal occurrences for most churches. Most churches don't have people that have tremendous experience or expertise in fundraising or strategic planning. We needed somebody that we could pose questions to along the way. And maybe more importantly, we needed someone who would raise the questions that we weren't even asking. And that was the role that Church Growth Services was to play for us. And so it was critical. We needed somebody to help us to think about how to approach people in our congregation who had the capacity to give large gifts. I certainly didn't consider that to be something in my wheelhouse, my temperament. I'm not really wired that way. I don't feel comfortable making the ask in some of those sort of situations. And so they were able to help us think through, how could we do that? How could we structure conversations, initiate conversations that would be productive and would really help those people with capacity to feel affirmed, feel like they're doing something really significant in terms of investment in local church ministry. And so they were able to walk alongside of that with us. I think our congregation also was very concerned that they were very concerned that the project did not become a detraction or a deterrent or a distraction from ministry. And they didn't want to see my time occupied by it. They didn't want to see it dominate our worship services. And so the idea of bringing someone else alongside that could essentially serve as a part-time temporary staff member was really appealing for the church. That was a selling point for them. And I think after the initial pre-campaign analysis, they also came to really respect church growth services. They were not salespeople. They were not slick operators. They were very conservative financially. They resonated well with sort of our church culture, which was very hesitant to take on debt. They were not pushing us beyond where we should be in terms of borrowing. And so all of those things played into what really became an easy decision for us to continue to proceed with church growth services to help us with the campaign itself. We really came to think of church growth services as our relationship as a coaching relationship. And in some ways, coaches point out new things, right? They highlight things that you're not seeing. You're out there on the field and you're not seeing the big picture, and the coach helps you to connect those dots. And that was true for us. One of the things they highlighted in their surveys and interviews was our existing mortgage. We had an existing mortgage, and that was a really big deal for people, how that was going to be handled, how that needed to be addressed before we dealt with any other projects. And Church Growth Services had some insights and some suggestions that helped us to navigate that. And those were just things we would not have seen on our own. So, but a coach doesn't just tell you new stuff. A coach also reinforces and pushes you and reminds you of the basics, right? And that too was part of their role with us. Many of the things that Church Growth Services helped us with were not radically novel ideas. If I thought about it long enough, that's just kind of common sense. But I know myself enough. I know the pressures of ministry, the limitations on time, and I just know that a lot of the stuff we would not have gotten around to doing. And they pushed us in a good way. They pushed us to involve a lot of people, which just raised our creativity level. We all of a sudden were tapping into people who had media capabilities, people who were strong in the financial sector, people who could help us do meetings with donors. It broadened our base. It created great ownership. And again, they just pushed us to do some of those things. They coached us in how to be better in communication, how to be more regular, what we needed to include to make sure people were on board. And even in a follow-up phase where we're at now, they have kept tracking with us to just keep things in front of us, help us to always be thinking about next steps and what's coming 2 or 3 months down the road. And that just has been invaluable for us. So in looking back over the project, we're still in a completion phase right now, still waiting for the rest of the pledges to come in. But as I look back on it, I really think our decision to go with Church Growth Services was one of the best decisions we made. They had given us an initial estimate of how much we could expect to raise based on their survey of our congregation. And when it was all said and done, we pushed past their goal, their estimate, by over $230,000. I'm convinced that our involvement with them was a big reason for the success of the campaign. And as I think about it, that was a pretty good return on investment. When I think about what we paid, there is a cost to it. You have to weigh that cost. But when I put what we paid and invested in consulting and coaching, and I look at the return on that and how successful the campaign was, we feel like that was an investment we'd make over and over again. So certainly, if you're in a process of thinking through how you're going to proceed as a church, maybe asking some of the same questions that we asked, maybe facing some of the same fears that we faced, would encourage you to give Church Growth Services a call and see what they could do to help you as a congregation be more effective for Great Commission ministry.